So let it be written, so let it be done. This is Tim, and I'm at a half run. Woo! Just getting the blood pumping. How's it going? So this is Tabletop Terrors, and if you're new here, it's probably very weird for you, but what we're all about is helping people become more creative and unlocking the creativity that they have within them, because we feel that it helps to make you happier. We do that with tabletop RPGs. This is Daily Damage. It's a live stream, it's a vlog, it's a seriously laid back conversational chat. So if you don't like that kind of video, turn back. Ye have been warned. I will be replying to comments. So I will always try to read the comments so that you're in the loop. But there's also weird pauses because the YouTube comments disappear and I have to take my chunky thumb and slide it up. Anyway, that's the housekeeping. This is Tabletop Terrors, and I'm hoofing it. I'm hoofing it. I'm walking. What is going on? Hey, Druid boy! Matt Click is here from A Fistful of Dice. So, February 11th, we have Provokers, which I'm super pumped about. If you don't know what that is, it's a live actual play of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and whether you're a player or a game master, it's a really good way to learn stuff about the game and get a cool story. So I highly recommend you check out the Provokers on A Fistful of Dice's YouTube channel. Now, is it cool to catch up? Sure, it's awesome. But you don't have to, because you can still come, hang out in the chat, just like this, except during the game. So I highly recommend coming and hanging out with us, hang out with me, hang out with Nate from WASD20, hang out with Mike LaShawn from Mike the Piper, and Barker from Be a Better Game Master, as well as, of course, our Dungeon Master, Mr. Matt Click. So, we're going to talk about Druids today. Specifically, we was talking about Druid Fluid. That was just a stupid alliteration that I used. No, that's not alliteration. That was a stupid rhyme that I used while I was typing the title, but we have someone who watches a lot. His name, or her name, is Heavenly Hit Points, who sent their first ever email to me, to us at Tabletop Terrors. So we got dibs on firsties, but they have this kind of interesting kind of druid that they proposed, something cool to do with Wild Shape, and I'm going to talk to you about that in 1 second. But first, let's visit the chat. Alan from Check for Trap says, my man Tim, putting in them steps. Yeah, dude. And that's going to kind of be my next point, showing up. The Command Tent says, love the GM hot sauce this week. Awesome. What's he talking about? Where can you get free GM hot sauce? Non-GMO GM hot sauce. So there is a newsletter in the very description of this video. You just have to click on my beard. Here, it's right here in the wispy gray. No, you go in the description of this video and you click and you can subscribe. It's called Mend the First Break. And it's not like a long article. It's just a couple of roll tables consisting of things you can use as a player. We call that player mustard, or GM hot sauce. And so these are things to add flavor to your game. You get it? This week's super late. It was supposed to go out like, we'll just put it this way. Mend the First Break goes out weekly, unless it doesn't. That's the schedule. Anyway, thank you. So if you want to get your free GM hot sauce and player mustard, click below, subscribe, and bingo, bango, bongo, Bob's your uncle. Oh, Matt made a really good point. So he also has a great recap doc, which makes it easy to catch up regarding the Provokers. That is such a cool thing, because as a player even, look, man, it's months sometimes before we play. I'll remember what just happened, but the nuance of all of the details and the moving, shifting world, that's difficult to keep straight. It's just not how it goes. So, Matt has this killer recap doc where you can just go and sort of, even if you know what's happening, just peruse it and you're, oh, that's right. oh, that's a name I should know, that kind of stuff. So it's really, really helpful. All right. Fahad says, "Hail Tim, king of the energy drinks, lord of the slancha." Thank you for those titles. That's fantastic. All right, so heavenly hit points. I don't know if you're here or not. I have a sneaky suspicion that if you're not, you're going to show up and ask me this question again. But basically, he had an idea for a druid. And I think that the idea he has, or she, is a really good seed idea for any class. And what it is this. When you wild shape as a druid, use a D12 and a D20. When you roll those die, it essentially determines, the D12, how long you stay in the wild shape. And then the D20 is what animal or creature you wild shape into. So it's rather than just having your pick and being able to say, oh, now I'm this, now I'm that. It sort of adds this cool layer where you take some of your own choices out of the mix. This is what roll tables are really good for. They're really good for making decisions for you. And so what I think we can glean from this, because it's a really good idea, is you can do this for various things for your character. Using rolls to sort of dictate a behaviorism, not just rolling randomly, because for me anyway, that wouldn't be as much fun, because then some drastically, crazy things could happen at the wrong time and mess over the whole party, that kind of thing. So I'm not suggesting that you roll and say, let me see if I'm gonna help you or not. But specifically, where it comes to, like, what can you tie to that roll thematically and story-wise to make it make sense? I love the idea that this would be really good for a starting druid. It's like you wild shape and you can't really decide because you're just doing what you can. You kind of flex the wild shape muscle and I'm a goat. That's it. How long am I a goat? Well, 10 minutes. Why? Well, because I can't ungoat. I can't ungoat right now. I'm not good enough. And so what I would probably do is just use that maybe the first couple levels and have that cool kind of flavor, because those are the stories that you'll tell after the game. You'll tell that story about how, listen, we're surrounded by orcs, right? And Heavenly Hit Points is there, and he's shooting his bow, and he decides to wild shape. Now, this is killer. We're expecting a wolf, huge spider, and out of nowhere, he makes this grand gesture, threatens the orc chieftain, and in a wisp of bluish smoke, becomes a goat. That's the story you'll tell, because yes, it's cool when you turn into a wolf and you eat the orc chieftain, but that's sort of par for the course, and that's okay too, because every moment can't be unique, or no moment's unique. So, but I love having some sort of roll table or some sort of device tied to a story element, such as, I'm not so good at being a druid, so I'm going to use these tables to dictate my ability. So yeah, so that's a great idea, Heavenly Hit Points. Thanks for emailing me your very first email of your history of humanity on the planet. All right, going back to some comments here. All right, so what you're looking at says, he who traverses while he converses. What you looking at? You are so sharp, man. Josh Rivera says, I just rolled up a half-orc druid who was born in the Outer Plains. Can't wait to play him. Dude, that sounds killer. Man, I love that idea. So I'm gonna hit the chat again, but the next thing I wanna talk about is showing up. What does that mean? Well, this definitely applies to gaming, and more so to creativity. Showing up is the hard part. Once you're there, it's easier to do what you need to do. And I'm gonna dig into that for just a second here, but Lucas says, hey Tim, Slancha. Slancha Lucas, may you mend the first break. Josh Holes, hey team. I think that might be a typo unless you're talking to the whole team, all of us, team tabbed here. Good to be here with you, getting our druid on. What's up, Josh? So he was talking to all of us. We're the team. We're Team Tabtarian. Dale is here. He says, I highly recommend watching Provokers. It's always highly entertaining. It's a blast, and it's got a little bit of everything. It's also got plenty of laughs, but it's pretty story-driven. I think all of the players, we love a good story and we love a narrative, so the primary focus is fun, but there's a big helping and foundation of kind of story choices and narrative, and for me, that's the kind of stuff I love to watch. I called it. Heavenly hit points. What did I miss? Well, I spent about 7 minutes answering your question. Swift Chimp, glad to finally catch you live, my man. It is glad to catch you live, Swift Chimp. I love that name. I love that name because it immediately makes me think of the Aquabat song, Mechanical Ape. It's like, who can face the unbelievable Mechanical Ape? Dustin says, sup, brother? Keep up the great workouts. You can tell you're getting fit. Far less huffing and puffing. Thank you, man. It really is, right? Because I try to keep a certain pace so that I can go a certain distance in a certain time. Physics. And yeah, I feel like there is less huffing and puffing, so I'm glad you noticed. Thank you. By the end of it, my goal is to be able to do like one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Listen. If you've ever seen footage of Iron Maiden live, it's a bit of a wonder. Bruce Dickinson is one of my favorite heavy metal singers of all time. But he's also one of the best showmen I've ever seen. Bruce Dickinson runs. I mean, runs. He bounds around the stage singing these songs. And he keeps his breath. It's ridiculous. So anyway, one day I would love to be able to be doing like Aces High by Iron Maiden, but my version is like jogging while I'm doing a stream. I'm like, run for your lives. All right, so showing up. We're talking about showing up, and someone actually nailed the quote. Fahad says 80% of progress is just showing up. I don't know that I've actually seen the quote myself, but someone told me that Woody Allen said 90% of being successful in life is just showing up. And I think about that every time I don't want to do something. Why am I talking about this? Because I genuinely didn't have anything to talk about. In the back of my mind, there was no burning thing I wanted to share. But I thought, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out there and I'm going to start walking. I'm going to stream and we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to show up because 1% of something that comes out of this conversation is better than 0% if I didn't do it. Not even counting the exercise. So my advice to you, this ready to action, what can you do leaving this stream to actually make a difference? This ready to action that you need to have is show up. Of course for games, don't flake on games. I mean, you're sitting there, you just watched that cliffhanger episode of your favorite anime, and the subs are so good, you're like, oh, this subtitle is perfect. I'm catching all the nuance. You want to watch the next episode, but you have a game in like an hour, so you want to send that message where you just flake on your group. Don't do that, because you're robbing yourself of the opportunities of what that fractal holds when you show up there and you have a conversation with a person. And so as far as showing up, the same thing goes. Sitting in front of your computer and typing something or creating something or writing something down or drawing or picking up your guitar. Here's what I've started to do. I've started to identify sort of important moments in times where I didn't want to show up, and then it helps me show up the next time. So there are conversations that I can peg where I'm like, man, if I flaked out, I wouldn't have heard about this. In fact, it's kind of an interesting point. I didn't even think about this. One of my favorite bands in the universe is a band called the Aquabats. They're a thematic band of more now like progressive sort of new wave. But anyway, point is, the guy who lent me the first CD that I ever listened to about the Aquabats I was totally gonna flake on him the day we hung out. It was like a whole day thing we had planned, and I was just really tired. And if I would have flaked on him, my buddy Phil, hi Phil, I probably wouldn't have learned about the Aquabats the same way that I did. And so they shaped a lot of things in my life. So anyway, my point is, especially creatively, but also, I mean, this goes for your personal life too. And I don't want to get too deep into that, but just be the one that everyone always says, yeah, they're here. And they're here 5 minutes early. Because opportunities present themselves to you that wouldn't have otherwise. That's all. So show up, because I love talking with you guys, but I really almost didn't do this today. I had to skip a few days ago or last week because I got pulled into a meeting for 2 hours and then the day was over. But instead of waiting for inspiration to strike you, strike inspiration. That's all. All right, so the final comment. So as I stick my thumb onto the screen and I go to scroll up, these comments phase. And one of the things I see is Jake from Mini Terrain Domain says, I feel like I should grab my phone and go for a walk while watching these. Jake, I've considered this. I would love it. And if I was more consistent, I would love it if everybody walked with me while they were watching. That would be so fun. I know it's really challenging, but what a cool thing, right? Like if we all walked, like daily damage. Let's get hoofing. Whew. Matt Click says, Bruce Dickinson. Bruce Dickinson is in ridiculous shape. Yeah, it's crazy. He runs around and he's like, I mean, he is singing full on. It's crazy. Whew. All right, we're going up. We're going back up to the comments. Whew. Heavenly Hit Point says, yay, he saw my message. Totally. I can't ungoat right now. What you looking at says, I have this D, 10,000. I'm not reading that wrong. Wild Magic Table. That's killer. That's exactly, those are the kind of things that make a, if you use them like really potent spices or like really flavorful spices like a curry, you're like, oh, I won't forget that. Woo. Hey, Heavenly Hit Point says, you calling my idea great really made my day, Tim. Thanks again. Of course, it was a great idea. And keep them coming because you're just getting started. Am I right? What you looking at says, join the military. You'll show up if you like it or not. Yeah, right? Hey, Patrick Fultz, what's going on, man? He says, newish Druid player here. Best way to handle animal companions. So, for you personally, or for the DM, because I handle them more as flavor than anything else. I know a lot of, there are a lot of different ways to do it. But for me, I try to imagine this thing as my real pet. And that might sound silly to some people, but I want to really care for this thing. At least go to that place in my mind, you know what I mean? And so, as far as how to handle it, work with your DM, see what's allowed, you know, what would be allowed in the region. But to me, I would make sure that the animal companion was sort of a part of me and part of my character and a part of what I was doing. So, I don't know if you've ever seen like the movie I Am Legend with Will Smith. Throughout that film, he has a dog the whole time. And you grow to love this dog. And so the dog is a character you're rooting for, just like Will Smith. So the way I would handle my animal companion is give it a personality. I guess that would be the most basic thing. But I also wouldn't make it an annoying thing that's always doing something one note, like, and then my monkey steals your stuff again. Am I right? That would be really annoying, but just have a couple of different behaviors. That would be fun. Like they like a certain kind of food or treat. They are really good at something. Maybe they have a flaw. Just a little, I would give it a little character. I would spend a little time, maybe look at some pets or some animals from like books or film or something like that, and just pour some cool, like rule of cool stuff in there. Something else, I wouldn't make them too snowflakey, but I'd make them recognizable. Like give them strangely colored eyes or a specific kind of fur that has a pattern on it. And then you start coming up with like a name. So if I have this ring-tailed monkey and on the back of the ring-tailed monkey there's sort of this strange pattern, I might start calling the monkey Bolt, you know, if it looked like a lightning bolt. And already I'm starting to imagine how this monkey would act and be and feel. Now again, monkeys might not be indigenous to your region, right? But the point is, I would give Bolt some mannerisms, like he's really well behaved, and maybe ironically, he's scared of thunder. And that would be a really good character thing to give to the DM, because if they wanted to foreshadow something ominous, they could make it thunder outside. And it's like, and as Bolt hears the thunder, he cowers under the tavern table. Those are just cool moments for me. Like, I love that. So I hope that helps. I don't know exactly what you're looking for, but that's kind of what I would do. All right, back to the top, back to the top. Jose Soto's here, what's going on? He says, how's it going, everyone? So far, so great. I think everyone's having a great day. It's almost Friday, which is always killer. Riders Rohan said, thinking of doing one, but so many horror stories. Dude, horror's really good. Very tricky to pull off long-term in a tabletop game. Very tricky. What's going on here? So, what you're looking at says, my biggest pet peeve is making plans and people flaking out. I'm there 15 minutes early, ready to go. Dude, just showing up. So Heavenly Hit Point says, I remember this D&D game when my brother and our friends were training to defeat an orc clan, and one of the friends just started singing, let's get down to business to defeat the orcs. Those are the kind of things. See, you're telling me that story now. That's the thing you remembered. Of the 50 other things that happened during that session, that's the one that sticks. Walk with Tim, I'm sold. Fahad, walk with me, man. And when there was only one set of footprints, I was streaming you live. Karen says, that's a great idea, Jacob. It really is. Bronitis. Most of the stuff I wrote is just by forcing myself to sit down and write. I'm always writing for hours. And then when I have the ideas, I scribble them down. It's rare that you're gonna feel like going to the gym. Some people, that's different. But most people who, it's just rare, you're gonna be like, you know what? I feel like stopping what I'm doing right now. I'm gonna put on different clothes. I'm gonna drive somewhere. And then I'll push metal around for like an hour. And I'm gonna count the number of metal that I push around. It's just, hey, it's time to go to the gym. It's time to go for a walk. It's time to tend to this garden. This is the one that I'm working on right now, because if I don't, it gets overgrown, like my gut. What you looking at says, watch the Beastmaster TV show and how he has his ferrets, LOL. It's a great example of an animal companion. Heavenly Hit Point says, by the way, could a mimic a person like it mimics a chest? Or would it just become a doppelganger at that point? Okay, cool story idea. Cool story idea. For your world, what happens? Mimics are the non-sentient, so they don't have awareness, sort of instinctive creatures that can eat and mimic. So a mimic that's a chest is no different than a chameleon that changes the way that it looks. It's just sort of trying to survive and eat. But you can make it so that if they're around long enough and they eat enough, meals or whatever, some sort of evolutionary step where the mimics become doppelgangers because they advance. Or you could even say that it's a different kind of species, like how we are to primates, But yeah, I think that that's kind of the defining trait, is a mimic. Most people would expect it to be an inanimate object, but don't let that force you to hold back. Let it be the cool thing that jumps up and says, okay, like how cool would it be? Oh, all right, let's just walk with me for a second, and we're gonna paint this scene, okay? You enter the dark room. Cobwebs line the joisted ceilings. It's difficult to see. The old furnishings in this room haven't been touched for some time, and most of them are draped with dirty canvas. But in the corner sits a lone chest. It looks of dwarvish make. It's not fancy. This chest begins to tremble.
Workout complete.
And move. And as you approach it, its mouth sneers open. Surely it's a mimic. And as you see its enormous grin with sharp teeth. It almost smiles at you as it begins to pulsate and shake. You hear crunching and cracking. The form before you slowly shifts and telescopes into a more stout figure. Finally, the center of the chest inverts, revealing a bristling beard. This mimic has somehow been able to forge the form of a misshapen dwarf. Roll initiative. Come on, like that's just cool. Like, it's a mimic. Oh, it's a mimic. All right, let's go kill it. Oh no, it's some weird dwarf creature that is a doppelmimic? What is that? That's, again, something the players would remember. So just don't be bound by rules. Take the two things that are disparate, take the things that don't make sense, and come up with the chain that links them together, and that is how you come up with an original idea. Don't dismiss why it can't work. Come up with the glue that holds it together so that it can work. And by doing that, you're critically thinking. You're coming up with things that people say, oh, that's cool. To me, that's kind of the distinguishing factor. If you can take two unrelated things, or two things that maybe shouldn't work, and bridge them together with something that just makes it plausible enough, you got yourself a hand wave. You got yourself a cool thing. You got yourself an aha, a thing the players will remember. Going back up to the top of the chat. Riders Rohan says, Mimic says any inanimate object, so humans wouldn't count. But a statue of one would. That's a really good point. Heavenly Hit Point says, okay, thanks. Patrick Foltz, yeah, thanks. Awesome, man. What you're looking at says, I don't know, sometimes an inanimate object. Fahad, I think Riders was talking about doing a Kickstarter, not a horror story. Riders, I missed that entirely. You're looking to do a Kickstarter? Hit me back, man. Uh-oh. We got a Terminix guy. We got bogeys. Hold on. I probably shouldn't film people without their permission, but this is for my own safety. I don't know if you can hear what this guy's saying. It's pretty tasty. All right, Lost Angels is here. Says, what are we doing? We're talking. They oh, I didn't hit my final point. I just realized they said she had a D10, but they had to go and check again. She went into her game store and she found one back on the floor. Now she had a pair of dice, pair of dice, pair of dice. Whoa. That's my whole third point. Mason Zilla says, I had a room mimic in my dungeon for one game. Ooh, that's awesome. How deadly would that be? Fahad says, haha, Warmaker 777 is here. Listen, guys, Warmaker is making these incredible, like, supercuts of the short, like, decent parts of these videos. Less of the rambly, less of the paradise stuff. Anyway, they should go up beginning next week. That's the plan. So we're gonna call them Tabletop Terrors, hit points. Points we wanna hit on. If you don't have time to watch an hour of me walking and streaming, what's kind of the can't miss stuff that you really wanna make sure you catch? And that's gonna be these videos. Let's see here. Red King GM, sup? What's going on, Red King GM? It's really good to have you. Jeremy Francis, what's going on? I just love your free thought approach. That's what I find most admirable about your sessions and tutorials. Thank you so much. That's actually really helpful input because it helps us know kind of what to focus on. And it's what we're good at. You know, we've tried doing a lot of different video types and series, and we always land on the fact that James and I are really good at just sort of explaining things and thinking of our feet and thinking outside the box. So that means a lot, man. I appreciate that. Ryder Rohan says, yes, I asked how hard was doing your Kickstarter. Oh, I missed that one. Want to do one, but heard so many horror stories. I missed a very key message in that chain. There is one piece of advice that I would give to anyone regarding a Kickstarter, and this is the thing you can't skip. If you get this one piece wrong, your Kickstarter is probably about 85 to 90% likely to fail. Before you begin, before you come up with the pricing and before you come up with the product's specifics, before you come up with all those details and the minutia, the number one thing that I would recommend is that you have a genuine community. I actually just saw a Kickstarter yesterday, and it bummed me out because I won't tell you what it is for two reasons. One, I don't think it's a great product, so I'm not going to back it. But two, they had a very, very low amount and they had a very high goal amount. And I thought, they don't have a community. You need a community. What's a community? Well, it's genuine interaction. It's people who, they know you, they trust you. You can't quantify this with YouTube sub counts or Facebook likes or follows, none of that stuff. It's how many meaningful conversations you're having with people who you genuinely talk to. That's the thing. And so the horror stories are usually in two main groups. One, the funding is just, it tanks. They don't even come close because they don't have a community. That's the number one thing. People who, when you have something to release, they care and they listen and they're interested already because you've earned their trust and they understand what you're about and they want to support you. There's a whole other silo of horror stories, and those are the ones where people planned poorly or the product isn't good. But that's what I would recommend, is you got to build a community, and that's really, really hard. So there's a book by a guy named Jamie Stegmaier, and he actually kickstarted this, well, several board games, really famous board games. But I want you to check that out. I think it's called like Crowdfunder Source Guide or something like that. Jamie Stegmaier of Stonemaier Games. Check it out, because half of the book is about building community, and it gives you tips and tricks. So I'm not saying don't do a Kickstarter, but I'm saying if you're gonna do a Kickstarter, you need to have a community first and have the product finished or really close. A Kickstarter is not pay me to make stuff. A Kickstarter is, I have something. I want you to help me bring it to life because all I need is money. We're getting ready to kickstart our next book, Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin. And this book is almost written. It's huge, it's a lot, but it's pretty much done. You know, there are things we'll tweak, and there are sections that need refining, and there are some holes, but it's mostly finished. The structure, the outline, we are kickstarting so that we can get the most amazing art we've ever had in any of our books, and we have a vision for what we want this book to look like. So when we brought it to, we're going to bring it to Kickstarter, when we do that very soon, our entire pitch is going to be, hey, we have a book, we're really proud of the content, we want it to look amazing. So that's the other thing, is make sure you have a reason to reach out there and ask for money. And if you can do it on your own, do it on your own, because we didn't kickstart until we made 17 books on our own. Why? Well, because even if we had a ton of money in the beginning, we wouldn't have known how to do it. We didn't know how to make a book. So we slowly learned, book after book. And you can see chronologically, if you go to our first books, every book, there's an improvement. There's an improvement in the writing. There's an improvement in the look. There's an improvement in the art, all of that. We taught ourselves how to make RPG books first because we didn't want to mess up the big one. We did a small Kickstarter first, Oath of the Frozen King, because we wanted to learn Kickstarter first. So that's another option. And in this book that I recommended you, there are these micro Kickstarters, super small. I mean, like $300, $500, $1,000. The point of these, very specifically, is to learn how Kickstarter works in a very small, measured environment where failure isn't a big deal and you're likely to succeed because the goal threshold is so low. I would recommend something like that. So Kickstarter as a platform is amazing. It's just like anything else, though. It's a tool and you need to use it the right way. All right, last few comments. Heavenly Hit Point says, what about a donut mimic? Done. I'm in. You go in to bite the donut, and all of a sudden it turns into a mouth and bites your hand off. Red King GM says, this is Rory. Oh, what's up, man? Thanks for the vid. I was craving sinking like this today. Killer, man. Warmaker 777. Just had a crazy idea. A sword mimic. Doesn't attack the wielder. It would be a cursed sentient weapon that demands the wielder to keep defeated. Love that idea. Like, the end of it splits open in 4 pieces, like, and like, the wielder wins because their sword is a mimic and is eating the enemies. And so I would make it so that, sometimes I think in short stories and comic books rather than sessions, but it's all fluid. You can repurpose this, but the idea is that the story starts and it's in this room, and it's like, basically the guy's trapped. There was a cave in and there's no monsters around, and that's the problem. So the mimic is leaning on one wall and this very hungry man is leaning on the other, and then that's where the story starts. The mimic slowly, it like falls off the wall and then slowly starts rolling towards the man like, hey, look, we waited long enough, it's your turn. And then it could even be like a single encounter one-shot where that's the encounter. You fight a sword mimic to stay alive, you know, that kind of thing. It reminds me a lot of like the beginning of a video game, you know? Like you start off there, no clothes, just like rags, tattered rags, maybe a loincloth. You have to fight a sword mimic, and then you beat it, and that's now your weapon. Something like that. Yeah, very, very cool idea. Says Heavenly Hit Points and me. Red King GM says something like this. Ah, that makes sense. It was an autocorrect. Fahad says, ultra hyped for Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grid. Me too, man. Oh, we can't wait to share it. So many things, so much is done, and we're ready to just share it with the world, but we're waiting, we're refining. Red King says, Dead Man's Guide equals take my money. Well, the Kickstarter will be soon. Just that's constant. A bunch of comments saying they're waiting for this campaign setting guide. That means a lot. C.A. Hollenbach, hello! What's going on, man? Fahad says, oh, hey, Tim, did you get my email? Not yet. I typically will check my email at night for Tabletop Terrors, and then I don't check it again until after work the next day. So if I had already gone to bed or if I had already checked it, I try to really kind of measure and limit that stuff. So it's very segmented, and so I'll get it tonight for sure. Anyway, I'm gonna end it here. All of you are amazing. She dreams of pair of dice. Whoa, 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 whoa. May you mend the first break. May you kill the first snake. And may you conquer everything you undertake. Sláinte. And of course, until next time, may your dice roll high.